So go back about 4 years ago, OSF was a traditional switched network with one of the large players in the industry, various age of gear from ridiculously old to mostly old to still supportable. A lot of it was through acquisitions. OSF has grown quite a bit. We're at 15 hospitals, around 140 locations across Illinois. And you go back 7 years ago, there were about 7 hospitals, 8 hospitals. So it's a lot of growth in a short period of time. And all that stuff just sort of got merged together. And the realization was that infrastructure had a high failure rate, very inconsistent from models and everything else. So sparing was hard. So we really went back and said, we need to refresh the whole network. And what should our architecture look like? So we reviewed the whole architecture from that standpoint to figure out what could we do to improve resiliency, reliability, ease of support, all of that stuff at the same time. And ultimately, that's where we landed on fabric and extreme. We went away from chassis and pizza box and everything to our goal is a 48 port failure domain is the largest failure domain that you can have. We're almost there. Extreme's worked with us a lot to adjust how the fabric works so we can get there. There have been some limitations that have prevented. We're not ready for that. We need to go back and make some migrations. But the idea is we have essentially the same switch everywhere. We're running the same operating system everywhere. And therefore, deployment of new facilities and new stuff is easy. The fabric then and automation, those two things together make it really easy for us to then deploy devices with minimal touches. And from an M&A perspective, we're able to go out and acquire a facility. And something in the old days was a big problem. We had to set up all kinds of firewalls. You had to do network address translation. Now, because of what the fabric can do, I can take the servers that in that acquisition, I can go put them in my data center without even changing the IP addresses. I can bring them back across the fabric, and I can do data center consolidation without re-IPing the entire environment, without changing all those. And then I can, over time, address that stuff in a much more controlled manner. So it really opens up automation, security, easier data center consolidation. We're writing that across a backbone of 1,000 miles of owned fiber that connects most of the major facilities inside of OSF. And then we're connected with about every carrier that exists in the Midwest. That's price. We pick it for the price performance characteristics. And with Extreme riding across this fabric network and the fabric running across the fiber network and through the carrier networks, we have high resiliency and low data loss, low latency. And it makes life just a lot easier. Kind of as Rob talking, there's multiple paths in there. So if something dies, a switch goes down, you can get somewhere else. And then going back to that ease of use again, which is one of the reasons we landed on the solution we landed. You throw that switch, you pull the switch out, you pull the cables out, you put it in, you plug it in, and you're up. Some of the side benefits of that are if a switch fails, somebody can go grab 99% of those cables and just plug them in anywhere it's going to fire up. There's still a few old devices that don't handle automation because of how they work. But there's very few of those, and they have a different colored cable, and everybody knows that takes a little bit different effort. But everything else, just find an open port, plug it in, it'll come back up. And that's a huge change versus it's down until somebody can get there with a new switch. You can put the new switch in, you fire it back up, you get the config, and then you put all the ports back in the right spot. Otherwise, you're back to the whoops, across 2 cables, and all of a sudden nurse call doesn't work still. Those kinds of things happen. So that's really our journey, was to simplify the environment, secure the environment, and reduce the operating overhead. And we've been very successful in all 3 of those through the Extreme solution.